What's the real hope of Christmas? Where is the peace on earth? Where is the goodwill towards men? Let's look at the hope of Christ's coming. Let's look at Mark 13, 24 to 37, and why it really is good news. Advent is a time of hope. In Mark 13:26, we read that everyone will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great power and glory. All human governments will eventually end. A world ruler's coming who will bring ultimate justice for the downtrodden. He's coming as he left, in the clouds. It's not a secret rapture, but a very visible rapture, because everyone will see him. Who's he coming for? Mark 13:27 reveals the answer. He'll send out his angels to gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. In Mark 13:28, Jesus teaches what we can and cannot know about the end of all things. You can know that his return's very near, right at the door. However, no one knows the day or hour when these things will happen. Christmas is about stress, gift-giving, sentimental moments, family time, a holiday with pagan origins, materialism, Santa Claus, retail sales, but most importantly, the coming of Christ. In the midst of Christmas frivolity is a serious message. We need world peace. Christmas reminds us that he who came once will also come again to finally bring what he promised. Peace at last. It's nearer this year than last. Mark 13:33 to 37 tells us, since you don't know when that time will come, be on guard, stay alert. I say to you what I say to everyone, watch for him. What should we watch? Jesus wants us to avoid religious hypocrisy, to watch and pray lest we fall into temptation, to sit with him while he prays for us, to take heed to ourselves, that we don't let our hearts be dulled by games, substance abuse, and the worries of this life, and keep our wedding clothes ready. In Isaiah 2:2, we read, in the last days the mountain of the Lord's house will be the highest of all, the most important place on earth. In modern thought, we separate church and state, but in God's kingdom, church and state are one. God's church is subject to God's kingdom. Mountains were the earliest places of worship. Zion was a small hill in Jerusalem where worship took place. Spiritually speaking, the Christian church will become a great mountain in the world, towering above all mountains, and all nations will seek it. It'll become the Lord's mountain house, and people from all over the world will stream there to worship. In Isaiah 2:3, we read that people from many nations will come and say, come, let's go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of Jacob's God. There he will teach us his ways, and we'll walk in his paths. For the Lord's teaching will go out from Zion. His word will go out from Jerusalem. What are the primary reasons for going to church? Worship is a spiritual experience, whereby we go up to God's heavenly mountain, to heavenly Jerusalem, to hear the Lord's teaching from heavenly Zion, to hear his word preached. We go up weekly to the height of holiness and peace. In Isaiah 2:4, we read, the Lord will mediate between nations and will settle international disputes. They'll hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will no longer fight against nation, nor train for war any more. The exception of justifiable warfare in the Old Testament does not negate God's overall will in regards to war, nor did historic atrocities of the church represent God's will. God's undeniable will is mediation and turning weapons of war into instruments of peace. The church's role is to be a force for peace. When Christ returns in triumph, he'll demand international peace, and prosperity will result for all. In Micah 4, verses 1 through 3, we read, "In the last days the mountain of the Lord's house will be the highest of all, the most important place on earth. It'll be raised above the other hills, and people from all over the world will stream there to worship." The expression "the last days" is defined at Pentecost as that time beginning with the coming of the Holy Spirit. We've been in the last days for almost 2,000 years. The mountain of the Lord's house has become the highest, the most important place on earth today. People from all over the world are streaming into churches to worship God. In God, there's no separation of church and state. Isaiah 9:6 says, "For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." The reign of King David was far from perfect, and his dynasty degenerated over its long history. Of more than 20 kings of the house of David, perhaps 4 could be described as good in human terms. None of the kings of the northern breakaway kingdom could be described as good. The successor to David, God with us, will bring about world peace. In Isaiah 9, verse 7, we read, "His government and its peace will never end. He'll rule with fairness and justice from the throne of his ancestor David for all eternity." Ancient Israel was a theocracy, a government of church and state together. In the hands of man, no form of government will be perfect. However, the government of David symbolized the eternal government of God. We're voting every day of our lives for our king, by whether or not we'll join with his eternal reign. We all long for a government that'll bring fairness and justice to all. Such a government we would never want to end. In Isaiah 11, verses 1 through 9, is a summary of God's government. He'll not judge by appearance, nor make a decision based on hearsay. He'll give justice to the poor and make fair decisions for the exploited. Nothing will hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. For as the waters fill the sea, so the earth will be filled with people who know the Lord. This reveals some great principles of God's government: justice, fair decisions, and no harm. How much do we champion the weakest among us and seek to do no harm? The earth will be filled with people who know the Lord. Will we be among them? What is the real hope of Christmas? Is it self-indulgence or peace on earth? Where is the peace on earth? Where is the goodwill towards men? Has it begun with us?